Wednesday, June 21st, 2023, Richmond Planning Commission. We have a quorum, and we actually will only need 4 people for a quorum now, because yesterday the select board did reduce the number of members to 7 instead of 9. So we're good to go. Okay, great.
You have a floater you have to get rid of, though.
Floater.
Me. Yeah, I mean,
Oh,
I guess I got
floater.
squeezed out by me voting to reduce the size of the planning commission, but this is like, it's getting really strange.
You didn't recuse yourself from that vote, Lisa?
Yeah, did I? I don't remember.
No, you didn't.
I didn't? Oh, okay. It was honest business. There were no names
Yeah.
involved.
Yeah, it's fine anyway. It's good to have somebody who knows what we're doing on the select board.
Well, I was hoping to be able to do both, because I mean, I can't think of a better, kind of back and forth than sitting in the middle of both discussions. That's where the real meat is the discussions, I think.
Yeah,
that's where I learned a lot. So,
Yeah,
so I'll just have to listen in and be a bug on the wall.
yep, sounds good. Well, you can speak too. Why not? So our first agenda item is to review and adjust the agenda. Does anyone have any adjustments they would like to make to the agenda? Seeing none, we'll proceed with the agenda as it is. And we will move to our next item, which is to see if there is any public comment on non-agenda items. Is that Michelle Beal? Are you there?
Yes, we're here.
Fantastic. Oh, good. So you will be speaking on an agenda item, I presume, or listening in for that. Is that correct?
Yes. Yes.
Good. All right. Moving on, we will go to item number 4 on our agenda, review of the minutes of our 5/17/23 meeting. There was no meeting last month or last 2 weeks ago because we did not have a quorum. So we're looking at the 5/17/23 minutes. Are there any corrections or additions that anybody would like to make to these minutes? Okay, hearing none, we will accept those into the record as written and move on to number 5, which is some kind of housekeeping items for the Planning Commission. A, review the actions of the Select Board at their meeting was actually held yesterday. The 6/5 meeting. That's what I wanted to do first. Regarding the residential commercial districts, they were approved. The text as we submitted was approved. The map with the redrawn lines excluding the lots that face the Jericho Road was approved. So there's a small period. The map and the text will go into effect as the Richmond zoning regulations on June 26th. And we are about on track with incorporating all the changes and Keith has been working with Regional Planning Commission to get the new map. So this will all now be dated June 26th, 2023. That will be the version of the zoning regulations that we all need to use. So, and that you could have a hard copy made if you want, or look at it online, but that's good. That's done. The other select board meeting last night approved the reduction of the members to 7, and it also appointed Allison back to her seat on the Planning Commission. So Dan Mullen has told me that he will likely resign because he can't fit it into his life right at the moment. So we will be back to 6 members, but we should be able to function that way. The hybrid meeting policy and its deployment we had talked about having a written policy, and hopefully you've all read the little policy statement. Basically, it just says if we're going to have a public meeting or we're going to invite people to come and, listen and speak on some topic, we will have an in-person presence, but also allow for Zoom. For other meetings, we may continue to be wholly remote. Does anyone have any comments on that or want to add to it or subtract from it? At some point it would be nice to have a map session where we all came and looked at maps on a table. It'll also be good to invite people to come in when we talk more about S100. So there will be some times when it would be, we will have a presence, and you all, hopefully some of you will come as well. So is that good? People are happy with that? Do we want to have a way that we're going to deploy it? Do we want to give it to the select board? Do we want to put it on Front Porch Forum? Do we just want to have it on our website? What do you think?
I mean, it's totally up to us, right? It's not like the select board needs to
Yeah.
approve it.
Yeah, no, it's just to clarify in our own minds so we don't have to decide every time, are we having a remote meeting? Are we having a hybrid meeting? But we actually have some kind of a policy about it. So,
Yeah. I would like to, and I'm just throwing out an idea for discussion. What would people think about having an in-person meeting, like, I don't know, twice a year or maybe once a quarter? Just because I think I mean, I'm one of these folks that really values being able to meet remotely. It makes it possible for me generally, but I do think that sometimes we lose something by not getting together periodically in person.
Yeah. Well, I think that's a good suggestion. And
I'd just like to hear what people think about that.
Yeah, I agree, Chris. There's some value in having a face-to-face meeting. There's definitely some nuance that's got communicated there that's not in Zoom.
I'm seeing Mark giving the thumbs up for that.
Mark looks like he's giving thumbs up. Yep.
And Lisa, you're on mute.
I think that's all right. I would go with once a quarter or once every or twice a year. I don't know if we need to do it once every quarter. So twice a year, once a year. But I don't know how often.
Okay, that sounds like a good idea. I mean, and we'll either have to do it based on a topic, or we can try to, put out a Survey Monkey or something to find out when would be a good time for people to, to actually come together. I don't know if people are going to be able to say when it's best for them to come together, but we could certainly, and maybe a time is when we're going to have the public come. We can all be together then. Chris, do you think we ought to ask people when they would like to come, when they have the time to come, or whatever?
I don't know. I hadn't really thought that through. I mean, I think certainly doing it at a time when people aren't likely to have conflicts. I mean, things like August is generally a difficult time for meetings, period. So let's not do that. But maybe January and June, for example, just the holidays are out of the way, there's that stretch of time where things are a little quieter. And then June tends to be a time that's not too hot yet, but it's I don't know. I'm just doing this off the top of my head.
If I may, I mean, I would think that when you have your organizational meeting in June, that would be the time to do that. Everybody gets together. That's just a thought.
Yeah.
which is
that
either the
makes sense.
first or second meeting in June.
All right.
And then maybe a clam bake in December or something like that.
Well, I was gonna say snacks should be part of it for sure.
Oh, absolutely. Open bar, yeah.
All right. So we'll try to work that up.
Yep.
And that would be nice, I think, get together.
2 times.
Okay, and do we want to do anything else with this policy, or do we just want to kind of let it hang about? We could put it on our website, I suppose, or
I don't know if
as
this is
minimal.
really part of of this policy, but one thing I'd like to suggest as a regular order of business is that the last thing that we do in every meeting is poll people on their expected attendance at the next meeting, just so that we have a good idea of whether there will be a quorum the next time around. And I think that's particularly important in the summer when people are going to be away and doing things like that, because if we know that we're not going to have a quorum, it saves a lot of time and energy for everybody, particularly Keith, for not, and MMC TV for, being able to cancel the meeting ahead of time.
Okay, yep, we can put that on other business. You can remind us before you make the motion to adjourn if we haven't done it.
Okay.
Okay. Great. Well, if anyone has any ideas, if they want to do anything with this policy, just let us know. Otherwise, maybe we'll just put it on our website.
Yeah, I think it should be on the website, Virginia. That's where people go to look when the meetings are, where the meetings are.
Yep. Okay,
I think so too.
great. All right, we'll do that. Okay, item number C, the Code of Ethics and Open Meeting Rules. We were just reminded that we are supposed to have read them. The chairs of the different committees and commissions were supposed to remind the members that they should have read this and they should sign the document saying they've read it and return it to Duncan. So if anyone has not done that, they could do that.
And that's regardless of whether we've done it before.
Yep.
Right.
It's every year, I believe. Is it every year or at the
Yes.
beginning of your term? I think it's every year that you are required to sign that you've read the Code of Ethics. So,
And,
yep.
and
So,
where is that? Is that on the?
Well, that should have been sent to you. If you haven't gotten it, it could be by email from Duncan at this point. I know that
Okay. Let's.
I had it on my desk when I walked into work one day, but you obviously don't have that luxury, thankfully.
but so you could ask him to resend it to you.
Okay.
Duncan seems to be in charge of that.
Yeah.
Mark, you had your hand up.
Yeah, I was just wondering if we had investigated digital signatures and that kind of thing. If the town has any use of that for other purposes and whether that would be applicable to committees. Because it's a logistical pain in the butt.
Yeah, I mean, I'd love to have
I've signed this thing, I don't know how many times. It's the same version I've signed the last 3 times. And then I
Yeah.
have to print it out, email it to my work email, print it out at work, sign it, then make sure it gets dropped off at the town center. We should consider either at the beginning of each term or simplifying this.
Could you communicate with Duncan about this and report to us what he says? Because he seems to be in charge of this operation.
What is Duncan's email address?
Oh, assistant to the town manager.
Yeah.
I'll tell you what,
I'll try finding it online.
let me go ahead and do that, okay? Because I'm staff to this board and I could be just the one conduit to do this for you. And I'll just send,
Okay.
I'll send an email blast out to you in the morning.
I didn't receive it either, so if I could get another
Okay.
copy or get an email, that'd be great. Thanks.
Do you want Duncan's email? I've got that.
Well, I think
It sounds like, yeah, I'm all
Yeah.
set.
Keith is going to do it. He's going to reach
Yeah.
out to Duncan and also ask him about the signing it digitally, right? If that is a
Yeah, I
possibility.
mean, yeah, I don't think we could sign it digitally. I don't think we have dot loop or anything along those lines. We certainly could sign it, then you could fax it back, I'm sorry. I mean, you could scan it and then send it in. I guess you could fax it. I mean, I'm not sure if anybody uses a fax anymore. But you certainly can scan it and send it to me or to Duncan, and I can ensure you that we'll take care of it. But wait for my email blast in the morning, and I'll shoot you a copy of that. I'll get that with Duncan, and we'll get it together. And if not, I'll email you either way. We'll figure it out.
Great. Sounds good. Okay. Next brief item, resignation of Lisa Miller, because in the code of ethics, it says you can't be on both these boards. So, oh well, but now you can be on the Water and Sewer Commission.
It's a good thing I read it. Yeah, Joy, I got to apologize to you. I had spoken, you asked, well, what was I at the Planning Commission for as a select board or Planning Commission? I said, yeah, you know, all of those. Well, that's too many hands in the pot from one person, I think. So it makes sense that I'm not allowed.
Yes, all that power could go to your head.
Yes.
No, just keep me awake.
Right, that's what I mean. Yeah.
Uh,
All right, and then the last item on our housekeeping list is, so since Lisa had volunteered to be vice chair along with Adam, Adam has now left being the vice chair. Last time at our non-meeting, he claimed he was okay with that. So unless anyone else would like to volunteer to be the co-vice chair, we'll just try to get Adam going on it.
Exciting times.
All right, I don't hear any volunteers, so Adam, you're the vice chair. You good with that?
Yeah, still good
Okay.
with it.
Excellent. Okay, so we're going to move on to number 6 on our agenda, update on S100, discuss public outreach plan for the village neighborhoods. So the governor did sign S100. It is the law, or it will be when its appeal period has run, which I don't know exactly when that is. There are different dates, and Jana did come and talk to us a little bit last time at our non-meeting to tell us about the different deadlines that there were. And December of 2024 is actually the deadline for a lot of these zoning changes. So other parts of S100 have other deadlines. So we had talked about having an outreach plan in conjunction with working on the village neighborhoods to talk to the neighbors, other people who are interested in S100. Keith, you wanted to say something?
Yeah, I do want to say something. I did get something from regional planning today that the dates have changed for enacting. They've moved them up to July 1 as opposed to December. And that landed just as I left today. So I'll keep you all updated on that when S100 is going to be applicable date-wise.
So is that July 1, 2024?
23.
The zoning changes?
Yeah.
All the
Well,
changes?
I don't know. I didn't.
Okay.
Yeah, I just wanted to let you know that there has been a change in the dates.
Okay.
So let me put my hand on.
All right. So, and we'll wait a little bit longer for some of the bodies to weigh in, like the Vermont League of Cities and Towns. We did include in the packet for this meeting the legislature's council summary of the changes. So this does have the main changes. It lacks some of the detail that there is in the law I've found in looking at it. But we would like to, we had talked about and would like to start reaching out to people to tell them about these changes and this new law. So I'm looking for ideas about how we want to do it, when we want to do it, what we would like to do with this. I don't think that our next meeting, the 5th of July is a very good meeting to be having an outreach session. But maybe the second meeting in July, in August, do we want to wait a little longer for some of these instructions to land? What do people think?
I don't think we should try and have a public meeting in August, just because those suffer from poor attendance.
Okay,
But
maybe
that's-
September.
Yeah, I mean, the second meeting in July, I suppose, could work, but September's good too. Maybe by September, things will have shaken out a bit.
Yeah.
Yeah, I
Well,
was just gonna weigh in and say it sounds like the more time we can give it, the more info we'll have and the more accurate and conclusive answers and questions can be.
yeah, and we're certainly not going to make all these changes by July 1st, 2023. So
Mhm.
that's a pipe dream if anybody thinks that's going to happen in all the zoning in all the
Right.
towns in Vermont, that people are going to make all these changes by July 1st, 2023. That is not going to happen. So,
So what will happen is that the zoning administrator will be utilizing this legislation as we go forward. It's just not going to be updated in our zoning regulations. I mean, it's mandated. So same goes for many other things that are still out there, such as cannabis and ADUs and accessory on-farm businesses. Those are all mandated, and we enact them based on that mandate. We have to update our zoning regulations, which we're all going to have to be a part of, and that's all part of the technical aspect of this. And we'll get that going. And I've alluded to that in the past, and we'll just leave it at that. And Virginia, I'm sorry to step on you there.
no problem. Yeah, well, I mean, it's going to be interesting to see how that works when people are reading the zoning and then they're being told something different. So,
Right. I know.
yeah, so maybe we ought to get going on it in our second meeting in July. I don't know. We'll have to see if everybody can come then. It's a lot of people are away in the summer, for sure. Anybody else have any thoughts about this? We can, certainly work on it more in September. I think people are back kind of in gear for doing this kind of work in September. Back to school, everybody's around. All right, well, I'm inclined, if possible, to wait till September. I don't know if anybody else wants to really get going sooner than that.
I would say we also don't have to do just one. I mean, we could do multiple.
Right.
So
Yeah.
We certainly can start it in July and do one every other month or something along those lines. Just a thought.
I mean, we could do an introduction, I suppose, as
Mhm.
like a short introduction to it, to the fact that it's happened. And, I'm sure there are going to be multiple meetings on the neighborhoods anyway. So, all right, well, we'll see if everybody, all of us, can come to that second July meeting, and maybe we'll schedule just like a short intro session to this, the whole concept.
Yeah.
All right, so we'll continue to think about the neighborhoods in general and to look over the work that we already did on the neighborhoods, but definitely get the neighbors back in. All right, so then we can move on to number 7, and we can have a more thorough discussion of this, because S100 is not impacting it for the most part. S100 is mostly for areas served by water and sewer. So item number 7 is to continue our discussion on the commercial and the industrial commercial zoning districts, the two of them that are out there by exit 11.
Gonna share the screen here.
We're going to take a look at the maps so everybody can see what areas we are talking about.
Bear with. Okay, so this is the current. Everybody see this?
So, yeah, so what you're looking at is that sort of mottled place is the industrial commercial. There's a section to the north of the mobile home park, and there's a section to the south. And that white area in the middle is the mobile home park, which is a large neighborhood of 160 residences. The pink, or whatever that color is, kind of puce, possibly, color, is the commercial district. And it includes that little 3-acre parcel up there standing all by itself in the middle of the industrial commercial. So that is the commercial district. So everybody good with seeing where we are? The industrial commercial district also included, that you could see on that map down at the bottom of the screen, is the gravel pit on Kenyon Road. So that's that. And the commercial, there are several outlying little commercial chunks, which are kind of weird and of unknown origin. One down on by the VYCC on Route 2, and there's one in Jonesville, which we haven't really discussed very much, the Jonesville area yet. So, and currently the Man and Machine Island, the Round Church Corners complex, is also in the commercial district. And we had talked about adding that to the village commercial, the Railroad Street area, where the grocery store and the hardware store are, combining that little piece with the Railroad Street to make both of those village commercial. So we had talked about that at one point, hadn't finalized anything there, but so thinking of removing that, the piece at the VYCC, there doesn't seem to be any real reason why it's like it is, so we might want to do something different there. Jonesville is the whole topic unto itself. So anyway, now if you could, Keith, you could point out perhaps where the Beals would be interested in developing a lot, a housing lot.
Yes, so. And what I'm gonna do, I'm gonna put the ortho up at one point, but RG
Yep.
0090 is the Beals property right here. So let me put the ortho up. All right, so it's this parcel right here.
Looks
Zoom in a little bit.
okay. So you can
And-
see that little freestanding lot, that 3-acre parcel, the little rectangle, that's that one. And then the area, which looks like a necktie kind of, is the Beals and Donovan's parcel. The house that you see there belongs to Michelle Beals' parents, Linda and Bill Donovan, and they're interested in moving north or east from the Donovan's house and developing a house lot further in there. We
Yeah.
did, oh, go ahead, Keith.
Yeah, that's correct. And the access would be off of Rogers Lane. It wouldn't be off of the what they call the Old Dump Road, which goes to Hutchins. The actual address for the Beals property, for the Donovan's property, is actually off of the Rogers Lane, that necktie area there. But access would be off of Rogers Lane behind the LP gas area there,
Patterson, yeah.
and Patterson's, and would access a lot to the back. So there would be a subdivision for that necktie lot. I guess we'll just call that the necktie lot.
Yep. And it's sort of, the access is kind of where the point, pointing to the west or the north
right
is.
around
Yeah,
here.
a little
Yeah.
bit there.
It's a flat
and-
area up here. Yes.
And then it gets kind of steep behind that. When we walked, we observed that. There are other residential lots on Rogers Lane. If you can look a little bit further north towards Jericho, there are at least 3 residences in the left-hand part of this map. You can put the cursor there. There's one just there, and there's one up in there, and there's 2 driveways leading to residential lots, which are actually in Jericho. So that area has a number of residences in it already. That rectangular lot to the lower right has a residence. That residence is accessed from the mobile home park, North Street in the mobile home park. So
So that's Judy's property, is it?
it's owned by Judy Rosofsky. It's rented.
Right.
So does anyone have any questions about this layout or this orthophoto while we're looking at it? Just below the necktie-shaped lot is J. Hutchins and Landshapes, which are 2 businesses that work on the ground. You know, they do some earth moving work. They have some trucks and equipment. To the left of the J. Hutchins is the recycling area. Across Rogers Lane from the recycling area is a wetland. It's a swamp.
Oh, yeah.
Which could not be built upon.
Yeah,
Any
that was
questions
also-
about this? Oh, go
yeah,
ahead.
That's also in the floodplain there too. So I mean, like, there's absolutely nothing's going to happen there. Yeah.
Right. Okay, everybody get the picture there of where we are. And Keith and I did walk around with the Donovans and the Beals. If you read the site visit report, the Donovans didn't report any adverse effects from the J. Hutchins lot. They didn't feel there were any violations of performance standards. The trucks seemed to leave in the morning and came back in the afternoon. Their kids rode their bikes around the J. Hutchins paved area. There's quite a bit of vegetation between J. Hutchins and the mobile home park to the right of this picture. You can see the lots on the mobile home park there on the right.
Yeah, so keep in mind, this is all in the IC or industrial commercial zone.
Yep.
Just as a reminder.
So this is in the IC zone. There are these, you know, at least 5 residences here already in this zone. So, you know, whether adding one more is a big problem or not is what we're here to consider. To the bottom, I guess off the bottom of this ortho photo is the lucky spot. There's a residence there that's owned by J. Hutchins. Yeah, and then south of that is the Lucky Spot fueling station convenience store, which also has a disused residence on it. Okay, so let's look at the other map, Keith, again, the first map that you put up there. Okay.
So this is the existing conditions.
Yeah, so this is the existing zoning district. So we pretty much looked at everything in the northern section of the IC district. The southern aspect of the IC district consists mostly of the Green Mountain Power solar array. And there are a couple of residences and a couple of businesses also in that lot. So that's the southern portion of the IC district. So then the next part of our tour was the commercial, the so-called commercial district, this purplish color. And we have at the top end, right next to the IC on the north, is the Lucky Spot lot. Then there's a section where the mobile home park entrance is onto Route 117. Then we have a couple of residences and a couple of businesses on the right-hand side of Route 117, the northeast side. Patterson Fuel, Blue Flame Gas, and one other business. And I believe a couple of residences going up Governor Peck Road that you can see on this map. So that's on the northern or eastern side of 117. On the western side of Route 117, there are 4 lots. The 2 big lots are owned by Milton Cat. There's a small lot that's owned by Vermont Fine, the restaurant that used to be the Checkered House. And then at the top end of that is an inaccessible piece owned by the Richmond Land Trust. It's conserved. So it's hard to see how you would get there, and you can't do anything with it anyway. I think maybe the Donovans conserved that piece and gave it to the Land Trust. So that's the commercial district. And, you know, as we walked around, there didn't seem to be that much difference between the commercial and the IC, the uses, the activities that were going on in these 2 zones. There were the same kinds of, you know, some trucks moving around, some materials stored inside and outside. So any questions about the maps?
Oh, I don't know, Virginia, if this is reaching too far back. I guess it's not totally relevant, just out of curiosity. But they're like, does anyone have any idea what the logic was behind drawing these maps this way, or were they kind of drawn this way based on what was there when the maps were drawn, or just out of curiosity? They seem to be very specific, so there must have been a reason.
I think they were most likely drawn because there's an exit to the highway right there, and typically that's where you would put your industrial commercial zones.
Sure.
The way it's grown over time, there certainly is not a lot of industrial, especially based on what our definition states. Certainly is more commercial than anything else, and I think that's why we think there's an opportunity here. But
sure.
With that said, I would surmise that would be it, Adam.
Cool.
Because of the location of the.
Yeah, I mean, I've spent a little time over there with the fire department, and then also being at Milton Cat for some work we have done there and stuff. And it seems like all the businesses and residences coexist fairly smoothly. I guess, I don't know, for everyone who hasn't spent time over there on the ground, the map doesn't really accurately portray how isolated the businesses and the residences really are, with the contours and the vegetation and stuff. It's actually everything's pretty separated. We just spent a bunch of time, about 4 hours, down at J. Hutchins Monday night doing fire training, and you would be hard, if we hadn't had these discussions before I went down there, you'd be hard pressed to realize there was even residential uses going on there. I think it lends itself very well to allowing to bringing the current residences into compliance with the zoning, and also allowing, you know, more residential development of some type. Yeah, I think the line, you know, we're to the west of North Road there, between J. Hutchins and the trailer park. That in particular, you know, on this map, it looks like J. Hutchins is very close to the western edge of the trailer park, but in reality, when you are at J. Hutchins, it's pretty much impossible to see any part of that, and there's a huge contour separating them. So
yeah,
that's my 2 cents. I think that there's a huge opportunity there, and I think that the potential impacts are pretty minimal. They all coexist together very well, and there's pretty limited chance for like a huge commercial shakeup and change, which I think would be the real issue would be a change in one of the commercial uses. that would impact the residences. I don't really see the any residential growth there causing the, any potential conflict. That would be my hunch.
Mhm.
So that's it.
Well, and we already have so many residences there anyway, including the mobile home park, that it would be hard to see that you would allow a heavy industrial use to come in there because there are so many pre-existing residential uses. So I agree with that.
Yeah, it seems like the zoning as it is kind of is promoting a use that would really be pretty detrimental to the area as it already exists. So we're kind of zoning ourselves out of potential residential uses, but also would likely not allow the really heavy industrial uses like you just said. So
Lisa, you wanted to make a comment?
Yeah, I just wanted to comment on what Adam just said. This gave me, I hadn't really thought of it like this, but it will be an experimental zoning district. You can't say that, but that's kind of what it'll be. And I like the idea because, so often the Planning Commission tries to think of everything that might happen before it happens, and, pretty successful at it, but you can't get every one of them. In this zoning district, you have the opportunity to see what happens, and it could go various ways. And it's, it could be more commercial, it could be more residential, it could be an odd mixture that we never thought of, and it works well. So great. And it seems like a really useful opportunity.
Great. And frankly, I think it was theoretical, like Keith said, it was a theoretical idea to make an industrial district because, towns have industrial districts. We'll put it on the highway to allow people to get on and off the highway more easily. Other people like to get on and off the highway easily too. So I think it was kind of theoretical to begin with, and it was not based on the reality of what was on the ground. So whether this is any more theoretical or less is really hard to say. Mark.
So what are we ultimately talking about doing here? Just basically converting all of our industrial commercial into basically residential commercial?
So the idea here, which the direction that I would like to see us go, is to combine the IC and the C district into just one into a commercial district. The commercial district, if you look at the uses, actually allows almost all the uses that you could possibly wish to see. So if you make the IC district, if you just combine it into the commercial district, you're not going to lose any uses. You're going to gain some uses. So the commercial uses would be there. We would add residential as a use, but we could say that you have to, protect the one from the other. You have to have screening or something, the way things are now, where there's some protection for the residences. If you put in a new business, you have to protect the existing residences from it. If you put in a residence, you have to protect it from the existing businesses. So that's my goal here. There's no real industrial uses here anyway. After all these years of having this district, these are the uses that we have, which are pretty much all commercial uses. So, Mark, I don't know that I see any loss of heavy industry, which we're not going to have there anyway. I don't think that's the reality.
We don't know that because it still is. I mean, and you talked about, wanting to have access to the interstate for the industrial commercial regions. But what it was more to the point of is not having the industrial and commercial driving through residential areas to get to the highway. So its proximity to the highway was pretty much not for the ease of the industry, but to protect the residential areas. And now we're talking about taking those industrial and commercial districts, which also includes a stretch along Kenyon Road. Let's not forget about that, which is currently an active sand pit. and also has easy access to the interstate once that sand pit is exhausted and leveled off, and they want to put something in there. But you're taking all of that and turning it into residential. And I just think that, you know, when you take away the requirement for commercial, then somebody's gonna want to build because it's easy money, it's quick money. And it's not as tax beneficial to the town. It is, you know, residents have a higher impact on town infrastructure than industry does. Different tax rates, loss of income or potential income, loss of income where these commercial areas decide to sell out to residential development and it doesn't go back. And then also a loss of future industrial income. Because yes, I know, yes, you know, COVID, everything, it's a different world. We don't have all these office spaces that people go in, everybody works remotely, but things still have to get made, things still have to happen and get built. And this is the last vestige of a good place to do it. We certainly don't want heavy traffic in the Village Commercial District where we're driving, you know, tandem trucks across that ridiculous bridge we have, you know, or through the village center coming from, you know, the hardware store region. You know, there you don't even want a good sized van traveling through there because it's such a traffic congestion nightmare. So the only place we really have to promote our residential, our commercial and industrial development is where it's defined now. And if we take that and say, okay, it's a free for all, if you want to put in commercial, if you want to put in residential there, then that's great. I don't think Richmond's job is to resolve the entire lack of housing problem for Vermont. And I think just running headlong into gangbusters, grow residential everywhere and let it go is going to be a good long-term plan for the town. Now, there is some residential in there now, and it is functional and compatible with the areas, but it's functional and compatible in the sense that it is an industrial commercial use, and the residences there are there at the bequest, the allowance of the commercial and the industry. These are regions, these are districts that are primarily commercial. We've allowed the zoning to enable the you know, if one of these residential homes wants to put up a fence, you know, we're not making them go through the DRB to get that done, but the principal uses there are commercial. And like you said, there's not really much industrial. I don't know what you'd call Milton Cat, but it's
Which is
still
commercial.
primarily commercial. Yes,
Yeah.
granted, there is a residential PUD allowance in the IC, but that's different from saying, okay, we can just build houses willy-nilly and houses have a right. So therefore, you know, if you want to put in a business and Jay Hutchins is running their tractors on a Saturday and it's bugging people, you know, that they can be stopped from doing that. If there's any place to have industrial commercial operations, it's in those locations and the potential of the Kenyon Road area. So I'm going to put that out there. No sense beating a dead horse. You think you guys know my opinion on this. I do think that I'm not alone. I think I'm representing a component of the community that may feel similarly. And you know, we can go through the song and dance of imagining what it would be like to convert all of this area into residential, and then go up against an activist component of the community that's going to fight this and make us battle, or maybe we can, short run, say, okay, listen, the areas off of Rogers Lane and the old dump road are, for the most part, residential. Maybe we throw that small area into AR. And then those areas can be developed as residences. It's a bit of a pinch with the gas company property right in the middle there, which isn't exactly compatible with AR zoning. So I don't know if you could, maybe we can come up with some other kind of village commercial type zoning that allows a mix for those units just along the old dump road. But to then just take every last square foot of industrial commercial and convert it to residential, I think is a big mistake and a long fought battle, which isn't going to help the Beals get into a home anytime soon.
Okay, great. Joy?
So I know some people who live up on Canyon Road, and I don't know if you guys are aware of the permit application that just went through the DRB for some office space, and they're not thrilled about it. So I don't know if getting the neighborhoods, I know we talk about it all the time, getting people in to kind of talk to them directly, but I think that for this kind of conversation, it would be good to definitely get opinions and put it out there. And
Yep.
So have you seen that, Virginia?
Well, I think Keith can speak to the fact that the owner of the gravel pit, which, by the way, the extraction of earth resources is allowed in many districts. Most of the districts in this town allow the extraction of earth resources. Yeah, so that's not special to the industrial commercial or to a commercial district. You can do that in the AR, for instance. Secondly, the owner of that lot has applied for some residential lots. Is that correct, Keith?
Yeah, well, it's actually Tyler Billingsley who is the town engineer. Is requesting that he puts in an accessory structure with an office component to it. And what my understanding is Tyler, our zoning administrator, is handling this application right now, and there is going to be, that use is going to be reviewed, potentially approved with conditions, and the condition is you have to get subdivision for that. Because it's just one lot right now.
Is it his residential lot, or I thought it was with the sand pit?
It's part of the IC.
Okay.
It's part of that IC lot, exactly.
Okay.
And
And when is that DRB meeting, Keith?
I believe that is, I think it's on the next meeting, which would be in August. I mean July. Sorry, July. So take a look at that. And I believe it was on the last meeting too, and I believe it was tabled. I haven't gotten a debrief on that quite yet. But regardless, that is moving forward. And I would highly suggest that the folks that you're talking to, by all means, get some public comment in.
At the same time, I did say to them, like, you moved here, it was existing, that use was existing, it was commercial before you all got there. So, to fight it would be sort of, I think, a really big uphill battle. But
yeah, it
is hard sometimes to explain to people, like, well, like, that's allowed, that's what is, you move next to it, or this is what our zoning does.
And I believe that I believe that lot is actually fallow. It's not an active sand pit. It's across the street is an active sand pit, and that's not even in that type of zone. I mean, it's grandfathered in, obviously, but that's gone fallow. Every time I pass it, I don't see really any action going on there. Correct me if I'm wrong.
The thing I see is people pulling in there to back up the other road.
Okay,
And
Which
the
is
whole-
not dangerous at all.
right, right.
The whole area is being developed with residences. I mean, that whole, what is it? The
All
whole
around.
left-hand side of Kenyon Road, the whole right-hand side with Turkey Hill Road, Chamberlain Hill is
Huntington
many
Homes.
residences. Is it Sadler Meadows or whatever that?
No,
name-
that's up on
Sylvan-
near Jericho.
Sylvan
Ridge.
Ridge, I think.
Mhm.
It's a Jason Weber development. Anyway, it's just
That's true.
creeping up forwards towards that gravel pit. So,
It is.
you
Yeah,
know,
it's great. Housing that's somewhat affordable and energy efficient, and it's a great use of the land.
so if that lot, the gravel pit lot was taken out, well, first of all, so there are two issues here. One is, should we join the IC together with the C and make it into one just commercial district? That's sort of one issue. The other issue is, should we allow housing? So if we wanted to take that IC Kenyon Road lot and just combine it with the other commercial, that would be one way to do it if we were going to allow housing there as well. Or we could move it entirely out into the AR, back into the AR, whatever's there. If we kept it as part of this commercial district, and if we just combine the IC and the C into one C district, you're not losing any potential for commercial uses. I think, we ought to make that clear. You're not, we're adding residential uses, but you're not losing any allowed uses in the commercial, on the commercial list. So they would still be able to, depending on whether we continue to allow the extraction of earth resources, which we probably would, and all the other commercial uses, but allow dwellings as well. And maybe we could develop some kind of language that would protect them from each other. I think, Lisa, you had your hand up for a while.
Yeah, thanks. Mark got me started on thinking about something, but residential in that part of Richmond is a good deal for the rest of Richmond. That traffic probably goes west. Those people may well work in Williston or that side. If they work in the east, Waterbury even, they get right on the interstate. They're not becoming part of the congestion that we're wrestling with, on the local roads. And if we're getting residents coming who would like to live in Williston, but they saw Richmond has, better opportunity, we'll siphon off their tax revenue. It seems to work. Plus the park and ride is there. These people work in Burlington or go that way regularly. We're struggling with ridership in the park and ride. Any kind of public transit really needs more riders. Maybe this helps. Maybe this is a little boost for that. So there's some benefits to having residential in that area, more of it, that could be really helpful in the long run.
The other thing that always bothers me is that there's this entire huge neighborhood of 160 homes in that district. And it's traditional, if you want to look at it like that, to put mobile home parks in a commercial use, because it is a commercial use, but it's also residences. All of those residences, would you want to put any kind of heavy industrial use next to all of those residences? It's a huge neighborhood. It's way bigger than Baker Tilden. It's a lot of people are living there.
Yeah, it's already there. Yeah.
Part of what we do with mobile home parks is we put them in undesirable locations, but maybe it's time we started to think about them as neighborhoods and protect them a little bit. Chris, did you have anything you wanted to say? And then we'll get back to Mark.
No, except that I completely support what you just said about treating mobile home parks like neighborhoods.
All right. Do you have any feeling about merging these two districts, whether it would make sense to merge them, whether it would make sense to allow housing? more housing than already exists. About a third of this is housing already, exclusive of the mobile home park.
Yeah. Well, I'll share my, I guess concerns is the right word. That I think what we've got there now is a balance, between the industrial businesses and the residences. And it's a balance that's been a happy one for some time. I guess I just worry how stable that is if you start adding more homes. And I don't have a clear vision of that myself, so I defer to others who do. But I think, it's that kind of conflict, of increasing residential use of what had been formerly, often it's usually agricultural land, right? Leading to conflicts is a real phenomena. So it's just something that I want us to make sure we're thinking through carefully.
Okay. Mark,
Yes, thank you. I guess to follow up on Lisa's point about how convenient it would be for residents to be there and letting this all go residential. I guess the only question I have is, and maybe Lisa may be the best one here to answer that question, perhaps, but I'm wondering what has the best cost benefit ratio for municipal dollars, residential versus commercial, which pays more in taxes versus their draw on wear and tear, infrastructure, schools, that kind of stuff.
Can I answer that, Virginia? Is it?
sure. Yeah, go
Okay.
ahead.
Yeah, Mark, I don't know that we have data exactly. Keith would know more than I do, but let me throw out one thing. The Sewer and Water Authority would love to have residences there or businesses or just development, because that subsidizes the existing infrastructure more than it's being subsidized right now by users. So that's a real win for the Sewer and Water Authority. And the taxes that businesses pay, I don't know how our business taxes are structured, but from what I understand, they basically go to Montpelier and they divide them up. So that's not necessarily going to do us any good. But people who pay wage tax and they're residents of Richmond, we're going to get some of that. So, and property tax, I think, goes same difference. Whoever's using property pays tax on it. So a differentiation there. But I think there's benefit to residential, a fair amount of it. I agree, Levittown, if you've ever seen that, but we don't want that. So some commercial, especially nice looking commercial or something interesting or a little cutting edge, that would really be a standout feature, I think. So we want to allow that. But I think the mix, I think we can adjust the mix as it goes. Planning Commission is good at that. So that's my opinion.
Would we be able to adjust the mix if we just allow residential in there, which means that pretty much any commercial property can convert full-blown residential?
Yeah, I'll guess. I don't have an answer. But
How are we going to control that if we make this change and say, oh, let's allow housing in here? And what will it do to the impact of future industrial and commercial potential there?
I would hand that to our planner and, sorry, Keith, throw you a hot potato. I think that question must have some studies done on it already.
But you are telling me.
Yeah. So I don't know. I apologize. I don't know what those show and what has been done exactly, but there may be data. I would hope that there's some data that's relevant to your question. And that's a good point. We're trying to foresee the future. So if we're wrong.
And you are telling me that residential produces more of a tax-based benefit than commercial or residential to a town. Because that's never. I've
That's
been
too vague of
told
a statement because,
by
you know,
11 units that I've been on this thing.
yeah.
Is I've always heard, no, the residential ends up costing the town more. So if that really is the case, then my
Mhm.
arguments and concerns about turning Richmond 100% residential
Mhm.
are alleviated.
Well,
But
I'll tell you what costs, I'll tell you what
big
costs the
learning
town
curve
with
for a
residential
good
development.
chunk of this community.
Sorry. Oh, I didn't mean to talk over you. What really costs the town with residential development is generally when it's farmland, it's converted to residential. It's brand new infrastructure, brand new everything, telephone poles, sewer lines, maybe not sewer lines, septic tanks, grading, roads, the big one. And then the traffic coming into a place that really, you know, a few years before it wasn't intended for that. You know, we start tying roads together. Turns out to be more popular than we realized. So those are costs that come with residential often. Now, in this area, those costs don't hit the town so much. The road network is extreme. I'm sure there's going to be driveways and, you know, little collector streets, but there's a great road network and go any direction from there. You know, sewer and water service is, I'm sure, is available. I'm sure it would be used. It's not. Okay, well, it
Not
could be.
there, no.
It's not. Okay, sorry. But it seems like as a service area, that's a straight shot. So, you know, my feeling is you don't want to close off either of the options, commercial or residential.
Yeah, you know what, how I like to think about this is that changes in population happen and what is a relatively smooth stream in increments of households generally, while infrastructure changes in lumpier amounts. And what you want is for the two to be matched up, you know, and as Lisa is saying, right now we have an excess of water and sewer infrastructure in the areas that are served by water and sewer. We probably have a deficit of road infrastructure. You could make that case in certain parts of the town, you know, which is why we're concerned about traffic. And then schools are a whole nother topic. So, you know, I think Mark's question is a complicated one in the end, you know, and I think a number of people have tried to answer this over time, and it depends. It depends on where the development is and what kind of impact we think it will have on these various parts of our infrastructure.
And in terms of the school currently lacks children. So
Right.
residential growth is good for the school. It's not good if you need to build another school, but we are not in that position, and neither are most of the schools in Vermont. Many of the schools in Vermont lack children, and it's, you know, you get your money from the state on a per pupil basis. So having more children attend the school is better for the maintenance of the school.
Oh, sorry, Virginia, I was gonna weigh in. I know a close friend of mine does a lot of education policy, and I think a lot of the, you know, education taxes are the vast majority of the taxes we pay to the municipality are really paid, you know, our local taxes are actually education taxes. And I think a lot of the idea that adding housing increases the tax burden is comes from before the Act, was it Act 60 days, when each town independently funded their education. Act 60 kind of started the trend of it being a state pool, and then obviously Act 46 continued that. And I think a lot of that doesn't hold true now. And then also, if you add in the fact that you know, we pay our tax rate, our residential tax rate is based on our cost per pupil, not on our total cost of our school system. I'm not going to go as far, I would never go as far as to say like adding residential would decrease our tax burden. But if we are having a school that is underpopulated or under attended, our cost per student does rise and our tax rate does go up. So I think that the conversation, the long held belief that residential will increase the tax burden on individuals more than commercial is kind of not quite as accurate as it may have been based on the previous funding models and current funding models for education taxes. That's shifted quite a bit in the last 2 decades.
And then there's the, you know, there's the question of the lack of housing in Vermont, which we, as a planning commission, have been trying to address in various ways. This seems like an opportunity to be able to help with that situation, to address the lack of housing. And if you go to the site, if you look at the areas, for instance, where the Beals are proposing to have a house lot, it's not very suitable for some kind of large commercial operation. It just isn't. There's a, sort of, it's wooded, it's very steep up behind it. There are various kinds of wet areas. Anyway, when we were looking at it, I don't know, Keith, if you want to add anything to that, but it didn't seem like there was the potential for any kind of major commerce there. So why not use it for housing? It's not a place where we're trying to save forest land and farmland, which is a climate change goal. We're trying to, preserve some of our outlying agricultural areas for local food and climate change prevention. So this is an area which could have some housing. And if we could figure out a way to insulate the commercial and the housing, some creative, so anytime you introduced a new use or a new housing development, you would have to have the landscaping or the, what's there now that protects the residences from the commercial establishments. You'd have to mandate that for whatever came. And you could also put in something that said, for what it was worth, the zoning administrator needs to tell people who are applying to live in this area that this is a commercial district and there will be commerce there. I admit it doesn't forestall all complaints, like the same is true with ag and residences, but at least it would be written into the zoning that commercial uses are favored here. You can put a dwelling here, but you have to understand that this is a commercial, and just define the uses that are allowed. So it seems like that would be possible.
I do have a quick question for Mark. I see your point about like allowing residential is the quick cash, and we're not going to single-handedly solve the housing crisis, as altruistic as we might want to be. I see your point there, and I think the existing residences work well, but converting all to residential would potentially be a loss. I'm just curious, how you would reconcile those two, because I don't really have a good idea of how to, allow the Beals to have a property, which I think we kind of all agree that's a reasonable development, and that type of development is good. But if we were to see residential pop up everywhere, that would not be ideal. I don't have a good way to reconcile those two things. I mean, I don't see. I was curious to what your thoughts are on that. So,
thank you. I hinted on, but in my long-winded ramble, it probably got buried in the gist of what I was trying to get across. But I think we're gearing up for a long, hard battle versus I can't imagine anybody being worked up if we decide to take those 4 properties along the old dump road and put them in, I don't know, residential commercial district.
Yeah.
And boom, they'll be getting their house permits this fall. I think that's something that we could push through very quickly and with no pushback community wise. If we try to restructure all of the I, C, and C into one zoning and allow residential, I think that's going to be a hard slog.
I do have a quick, just like to bounce off of that, I guess. Do you see? I think that's a good point, because then we're protecting the flatter, easier. Realistically, it's easier to develop the flatter land in the more open areas that are off the hill, not in the Beals property, for residential industrial and commercial uses. So that solves that. Do you see any issue with combining both industrial and industrial commercial into one? Or sorry, the industrial commercial and the commercial into one district if we didn't add housing to that portion? So it would be a twofold: combine those into one district that actually allows more uses, and then switch the residential areas to a residential commercial. Do you see that as being an issue, or I'm just trying to yeah, I
Um,
don't see,
Even still, I mean, the IC allows PUD residential, which would then say, okay, now the whole district gets PUD residential, which means that wouldn't help the Donovans and the Beals,
Yeah.
going to a PUD, but somebody could buy the ICAT property or the Milton Cat property and throw in a huge housing district and take that off of the potential commercial market forever. So that's what concerns me is
okay, so yeah, I see that. That's a valid concern, because the more developed, the land that's more easily developable for future industrial commercial use was also the land that would lend itself to a massive PUD and housing development. I can see your concern there for that. I think that's having been part of projects where that has happened as a working for a contractor, I can see why that is a concern. Definitely. Yeah, I share your concern with that.
So that's already allowed in the IC district and in the C district. Planned unit development are allowed currently in both of those districts. So
I'm sorry,
So
did you?
we're not changing anything.
Residential is allowed in both districts?
PUD,
PUD is, but is a PUD residential allowed in both districts right now?
well, let's look at section 512(1). And 512(1). A PUD or residential PUD may be permitted in the RC, now the VRC, the Gateway, now the Gateway RC, the Village Commercial, or the IC. So in the IC district currently, which is where J. Hutchins is, not where Milton Cat is, but in the J. Hutchins area, you can have a residential, could have a residential PUD. Well, the C district is not mentioned at all in the PUD section. It has been omitted. So what you have in 512(2), a PUD is permitted in the JC and VD. A PUD or residential PUD, which doesn't even really address what is allowed in the JC. Anyway, the language is not good. This section needs work. PUD or residential PUD, RC, G, VC, or IC. Nothing is said about the C district at all.
So if we were to do two actions, to take the Beals property and those residential properties and lump them into some kind of residential commercial district, and then separately take what was left of the C and IC districts and combine them into one C district, based on this, we'd be eliminating the residential PUD from the commercial portion, but giving the existing residential properties that were put in an RC district allowed use for residential. Is that?
Or an AR or something else.
Or an AR, yeah, or an AR, yeah.
I mean, if you put it in an RC district, you asked the question, one of our existing RC districts, or would it be its own RC district? And if it's an RC district, what is really going to be the difference between that and having dwellings allowed in a commercial district? So you would also, if you combine them into a C district and didn't change anything else, you would be removing a use from the IC district. And if possible, you don't want to remove a lot of uses that are already in existing districts. You don't want to take things away from people who might have been thinking they were going to do that. It's not, a hard and fast rule that you don't take away uses, but it's harder to take away uses than to add uses. So, but something has to be done about the PUD section not mentioning anything about C because it leaves it hanging, right, Keith? I mean, what's
Yep.
somebody in the C district going to do if they come in and say, well, it's not even mentioned anywhere? And yet in the C district text, it says a PUD is allowed in the commercial district.
I'm not sure if it's PUD residential though.
Right, it says 3.6. Yeah, well, in the PUD section, it's not mentioned as either being a PUD allowed or a PUD residential. Neither one is discussed at all in the PUD section.
Who wrote these regulations? I really want to know who wrote these regulations. It's ridiculous.
It's like the Bible. A whole bunch of people wrote them over a whole bunch of time.
I'm gonna leave that alone.
Lost in the mists of antiquity.
We've got to fix it. I mean,
We all
that's a
all have to get
problem.
our feet washed.
With hair. Anyway, we digress. Yeah, I mean, that's, again, I'm not a voting member. I'm here to, do what you folks asked me to do, obviously. We're here as a result of the Beals request. It appears to me as kind of somebody who doesn't have any skin in the game here, with the exception that I am running your zoning and planning department, that the focus on Rogers Lane seems to be something that is palatable. I don't know, as a whole, how you want to go out. I would agree with Mark that would be a lot easier way to go. It would get the Beals to where they want to go. I don't think there's any harm or any foul there. I think the only pimple or blemish is the liquid propane area there. But that's not a preclusion in my mind. You guys need to give me direction on how you want to go forward with this, and we'll start that process. Hence why we're having this discussion.
Right. So I would like to find out if anybody else except Mark feels, well, Chris, I guess, expressed some concern about the lack of commercial space. Is there anybody else who has concerns? Joy, I mean, how do you feel about preserving this commercial space and not letting there be residences when there are already residences in it? I mean, how do you feel about that? Do you think?
I just don't know who's gonna do anything with the commercial. Like, it's so hard to fill those spaces right now that it's almost like we're preserving land, and the land trust does plenty of that, if you ask me. I mean, the areas that are up near the housing, like, that where you're not really going to put anything but from some houses is a no-brainer. We should do that. I just don't know that we want to go into the whole can of worms with all these different areas and tackle this as a grand thing. So yeah, I don't know that I'm helping them all, but
There you are.
And would you put the dwellings or Rogers Lane into the AR district? HDR? I mean,
so.
what's the point of
what
putting it
else would
into
we
RC
do?
district?
We don't have a lot of other choices. What else would we do?
Well, people were throwing around putting it into an RC district, which is
Okay.
either into one of our existing RC districts, but there are a lot of, what did we put it into the gateway, into the village RC? That doesn't
Right.
seem like it makes any sense. It could be its own little tiny RC district, but maybe you should, there's some commercial uses in the AR district. You could put it in the AR district. There's some commercial uses in the HDR district. It doesn't really border any of those things, but
I mean, my other thought is that I feel like we have so many other things to tackle, one of which being the definitions that clearly need cleaning up, and just, we're jumping to something to help these people out, and I'm totally fine with that, but tackling this as a bigger project is, I think, sort of getting us off track. And I agree with Mark. I think it's going to be I don't know if I think people want housing and not commercial, but I feel like we kind of had this path, and I think it would be helpful for us to sort of have, like, every now and then revisit what our goals are and how they've been prioritized, and sort of saying, like, okay, so we want to, like, this is what we're going to work on next, and that would be helpful for me.
Okay. Chris?
Yeah, I just wanted to clarify a little bit that, because it's so hard to know what the situation regarding commercial is. And I want to also differentiate between commercial and industrial. And I think what my concern is more upsetting the balance that has allowed a harmony between residential and largely industrial, applications in that district, more than protecting area for future commercial development.
Well, what do you see as the industrial, the industrial uses?
Well, that's what I'm calling the hardscaping businesses, and even the LPG distributors, as opposed to like an office building, or a restaurant, which I would consider more commercial. But that's neither here nor there. I think the point that I want to make is that my concern is disturbing that harmony, upsetting the balance that exists there now. And I don't know that it's certainly adding one more house isn't gonna cause a problem. I don't believe that. But it's if we're somehow opening the door to a lot more housing around there. And that said, one of the things that I've always been interested in doing is finding a way to increase the size of the Riverview Commons. And that's a many-sided question, and part of that is potentially connecting it to the water and sewer system. But and that's a discussion for a whole nother day, but that, potentially also would disturb that balance. So it's a tough one.
Mm-hmm. So in terms of the definitions of industrial and commercial, the ones that I have come across in looking at this are often industrial uses require more permissive performance standards, noise,
Yep.
dust, etc. In our zoning, everyone is held to the exact same performance standards.
Mm.
So for industrial uses, except noise,
Right.
but that's commercial and industrial commercial versus residential. That isn't differentiating commercial from industrial. And industrial uses are more like heavy manufacturing, or airports were given as an industrial use, power plants, those kinds of things are industrial use. To me, what happens at J. Hutchins is no different from what happens at Milton Cat.
Yeah.
And Milton Cat is in the commercial district, and J. Hutchins is in the industrial commercial district. So they're all kind of outward facing, customer facing businesses. They just have equipment, but they're not involved in any manufacturing processes that generate odors, fumes, dust, gases, excessive noise. So I do think that we should look at the definitions. I don't think we have any industrial definition in our zoning, maybe
we
not
do.
even any commercial. So we could define some things, but on the ground in the area, there's no difference between, the LP gas, Patterson fuel, Blue Flame Gas, they're all in the commercial district. They're not in the industrial district. They're in the commercial district. Milton Cat is in the commercial district. So to single out J. Hutchins and Landshapes and put it in an industrial commercial district doesn't seem to me to make a lot of sense. That's all.
That's a
So-
good point. Yeah, no, I agree with that.
And putting an airport or a manufacturing plant that makes a lot of emissions or violations in the other performance standards right next to 160 residential units in the neighborhood of the, Riverview Commons also doesn't seem to me like good thing to do. So, all right. So where do people want to go from here with this question? Oh, I wanted to ask Michelle if she wanted to say anything. She's here. She's been listening to our discussion.
Hi, Virginia. Thanks. I don't have a lot to say. I appreciate all like the diverse conversation that's happening. It definitely like opens up a lot of perspective in our minds as well. But I think like the point that just hits home is residential already exists in this area and people keep forgetting that. So like I said, I appreciate all the conversation going on. Just don't forget that people already live there. And I know you don't think Richmond is gonna like, fix the housing crisis, but you guys can also be a part of helping. You're not gonna fix it, but all the towns can kind of come together and help. So anyway, we're gonna be here every 2 weeks listening in. So we appreciate it. Thank you.
Great. Yep. Good to have you. Okay. So where would people like to go from here? One of our goals, speaking of our goals, we have had the goal of helping with the housing crisis. That's one of our goals. Another one is of looking at this whole ordinance piece by piece so that we update it relative to our 2018 town plan, that we worked hard, we passed. There are parts of this zoning ordinance that have not been looked at for a very long time. Why can't we update it? I mean, if it's going to delay the Beals a lot, then maybe there's a point in not doing that right now, but this is an opportunity to do that, to look at these districts, to look at the fact that the PUD is not included in the C, we should fix that. To look at the fact that these uses are all the same in both these districts. Why have them in 2 districts? Anyway, those kinds of questions to me is not beyond our scope, but I hear what people are saying if we want to do it in some simpler way. However, what do people think we should do with this next? Where should we go with this?
Don't be shy.
We have to go somewhere with it. So,
I mean, I guess if no one's going to say anything, I think it would be prudent to explore the option of, I think pulling those residential lots out of the IC district will, not that we should change our zoning at the whims of one specific person, but I think the Beals make a valid case and bring up a valid point that we should, that's a good fit in those specific areas. So I'd say you pull those lots out and take that simple solution. And then I think that'll also give us more time to formulate a plan of how we want to tackle all the districts. I think that's a worthwhile endeavor to kind of reconcile and clean up the IC and the C district and all that, and really discuss what we want that to look like. But I think any one of those situations for the C and the IC district, we still think that residential is a good fit on the hillier lots where the Beals live. So I think that would be the short-term solution. And that also, allows them to develop it. It kind of shows that we are taking the housing issue seriously, but that we also want to have a deeper discussion about the commercial and the IC areas. So that would be my 2 cents.
okay. Anybody else? It does leave the other residences that are in the commercial and IC districts untouched, but oh well, maybe that would
It's a-
address.
It's a very
business.
imperfect solution or outcome. Seems like we're going to have a lot of those, so I don't know.
Anybody
How-
else?
How many other residential units are in the commercial district? I don't think there's any in the IC. What is there in the commercial other
In the
than,
IC, there are several in the IC district. On Governor Peck Road, there's a couple on Governor Peck Road, which are in the IC district. And there, I think the one that's owned by Jay Hutchins on Route 117 is in the IC district. That's
where's,
next to the Lucky Spot. There are actually two lots there that have residences. They may be in the commercial district. They may be in the IC district. That's what the line is there somewhere close to that. Then there's the little isolated 3-acre residential lot that's in the middle of the IC that is accessed from the mobile home park, but is not part of the mobile home park. That is a residential lot, which is just stuck out there in the middle of the IC district as a commercial lot in the middle of the IC district.
We lose Mark.
Mark?
Yeah, it looks like we lost Mark.
Okay. Well, we still have 4, so I guess we can finish up our meeting. All right, well, I guess we'll just go on thinking about this and seeing if we can move forward in some kind of expeditious way at some point. I mean, if we're going to get this zoning done by the time we have to do the town plan again, then we'll kind of have to move along a little bit. And the AR district is going to be a very big and long discussion. So just keep that in mind. If we could move forward, that would be great. All right. Maybe people could come up with their own definitions of C and IC, or they could go and look at the site and, see what's on the ground. That was really helpful to me, looking at that. Oh, you're back, Mark.
yeah,
So,
my battery died.
okay. So anyway, either of those things, go look at the site, maybe think of some definitions, maybe think of where you would put those other lots if you were going to do that, but how would that fix the rest of the problems? That's a concern for next time. All right. Any more comments, or we'll move on to our next item? Other business, number 8. So the only thing that I wanted to mention is that there's a little orphan lot that we have created with our RC district, which is the lot that's currently for sale. It has a 6-unit little motel looking like structure on it behind Umiak or next to Umiak up the Jericho Road.
They used to have the laundromat downstairs.
No, it's not. It's beyond that. It's the lot
okay,
beyond
okay.
that.
I'm gonna pull it up.
Okay, this is the current map that we're looking at now.
Yeah, unfortunately, that's all I have right now.
Not
So
the new map. Anyway, if you go beyond Umiak and beyond where the laundromat was, there's this little building. It looks like a motel. It has 6 tiny units in it on 1/3 of an acre. And it is currently for sale for a large amount of money. But, and when we put it into the Village RC district, when we put all the parcels up and down the Jericho Road into the RC district, when the select board caused us to remove all of those lots, they reverted back to what they were before. So the lots up and down the Jericho Road, except for this lot that I'm talking about, all went back to being in the HDR district. This lot went back to being in Village Commercial. So the question is, since it's for sale and its use may change in some way, do we want to think of doing anything different than having it be this little isolated, orphan, tiny piece of village commercial? The other lots, the Catholic Church, the medicine, the Goodwin Baker building, we have all incorporated into the village RC. So this is the only little tiny piece that now remains as a commercial only. So our options would be, we could put it in the downtown district, which it borders on. We could put it in the RC district. We took it out because it faced on Jericho Road. And I guess, I don't know how the select board would feel about putting it back because it's kind of a special thing that faces on the Jericho Road. Anyway, we could just not do anything. Currently, that lot, which is 1/3 of an acre, is the 6 units are grandfathered on it. If you took those away, you could put 1 dwelling unit or a business on that lot. If you put it into the downtown district, you have a much higher residential density. You could put 8 units of housing, which increases it a little bit from 6. You could have, a multiple use building with a business on the lower floor, some residences on the upper floor, like the Big Spruce, for instance, that kind of situation. So, do people want to think about this, or is this more than people want to think about? Do we just want to leave it in the village commercial district? Or would we like to think about what could happen there and try to work with that? Does everybody know the lot that we're talking about here?
Yes, I'd
I
like to-
do.
Yeah.
I
Yes.
actually brought this up when I went to look at the property, and started to seriously consider purchasing it, and then realized you couldn't do anything with it. Plus the fact that it's a tear down for almost 600,000. But anyway, it should be a residential, like something where we could do some units, more units. I mean, there's 6 there now. Why wouldn't we allow the same to continue? So I think it should go with more housing.
You
That's
think
what I was gonna say too.
you think what? What did you say at the end there, Joy? I missed that.
I said, I think it should go with more housing.
Right.
Whatever we need to do to allow more units there, we should do.
So Joy, are you saying you're advocating for including it in the downtown district that would allow like up to 8 units?
Yeah, I believe that that's the most residential we could do, right? Which that's the zone, right? Yeah. And just FYI, we walked away from it. This wouldn't do anything good for me, and I have no financial interest in it. So I feel I can say that without feeling like I'm, somehow influencing the board for my own benefit.
But in that vein, if we are going to change it, we probably want to talk to the owner if it's on the market now.
Why? It would
Well-
only make it better for them.
Well, that's our assumption. I mean,
Okay.
Yeah, I would definitely approach the owner on that before we do any zoning changes. That's just what we need to do. It is an orphan lot. It needs a home, and it's up to you guys to make sure that happens.
What was it zoned before? What would you have been able to do with it before we made our changes? The same that it is now? I thought we took away.
Before we made which changes?
Well, we made zoning changes, then the select board changed the map. Before all of that, before we did anything,
DC,
So it's in the no, it was in the village commercial.
Village
In the
commercial.
village commercial, you can put a residence on a third of an acre,
Mhm.
a residence.
Okay. Yeah, I guess talk to
As a
the owner. I'm
PUD,
just,
I think you
Mhm.
have to go through it as a PUD, but the underlying density is a third of an acre per dwelling.
The other,
you know,
the other
and
point,
it, yeah, go ahead.
the other point is that this is also in the designated village area. It's right in that area that S100 talks about.
Yep, so the density would have to go up to that anyway, either
Yeah.
by fiat or whether we
Mhm.
put it in the zoning.
Yeah, so
Yeah,
what I
I'm
have
gonna,
up,
I'm gonna second or third what Joy and Chris said. I think that we should, you know, assuming we talk to the owner and it's not gonna, you know, undermine the, you don't want to undermine it. I think it's under contract right now, so we don't undermine that. But I think that that lot in particular, as a very unique, housing to downtown Richmond. So I think we should do everything we can to protect that. I mean, ultimately, someone who buys it, they might choose to keep it as is, or they might choose to develop it further. I think giving them the opportunity to develop up to 8 units, more units in a lot will, hopefully, to make smaller, more affordable units, and that's kind of one of the things I think more specifically than just housing, that's the specific type of housing we're missing in Richmond in general and in Vermont. So if a little adjustment will potentially keep or create reasonably priced units in town, I think that's a wise decision.
Okay, so we could go and how do you want to do this? Just who wants to talk to the owner? Keith, me, us, several people want to go and talk to the owner. Keith should talk to the owner, or should we invite the owner from the planning commission's point of view to come and talk to us about it, or come to a meeting, or what do you want to do there?
I think it's already under contract, I believe. So I think it would be wise to have either Virginia yourself or Keith just reach out and not have a formal planning commission meeting, but just kind of give them the synopsis of what we were entertaining it, and see if that was it's not going to undermine the contract they have. So
yeah, I would probably be more apt to let that run its course before I would approach. I wouldn't want to throw a wrench into that at all. I know if I was purchasing it, I wouldn't want that. I have a certain mindset I'm in. Even though this is a positive, at least in our estimation, it might not be for that person. So, I mean, I would hesitate to reach out during something that's currently under contract. And I don't know what other people would think.
So
So
the
Adam,
until
how
the
do you know that
transaction's complete.
how do you know that it's under contract exactly?
I talked to the agent about it, as has Joy. It's definitely a tear down, but I get the impression the person buying it might keep it as housing as is, because you can't redevelop it as other housing right now, so it's kind of stuck there. So I don't know, but I didn't get the impression that there was a change of use in the minds of the purchaser and any of that stuff. They're going to keep 6 units, and
Yeah, it's an investment property.
but I think that either reaching out and informally giving them a heads up of what we were discussing, or waiting for it to run its course, would both be the right move. I don't think just changing it. Yeah.
Okay, well, do you want to go with Keith's suggestion to just not do anything right now? Everybody's okay with that?
If
See
it
what
is-
happens.
If it
I mean,
isn't yet under contract, yeah.
It would be
It might be
nice.
worthwhile to reach out, once the
Right.
ownership transfers, reach out to the new owners and explain to them what we had considered, and they might be great
Yeah.
news for them to hear, and then we have a new owner to work with and the whole process. So, but I would say let it run its course and
Yep.
Okay, so we will know, I guess, from the planning and zoning office when the transfer happens, if it does, presumably, right, Keith?
I wouldn't know specifically now, but I'm sure Linda would. So, I mean, I could totally reach out to the clerk when that does happen.
Can we keep up with it somehow to know when that happens? That would be good. Possible. All right, so that's that. I just wanted to bring that up. So the last item is who's coming to the next meeting?
Yeah. Well, I'm planning on being there.
Okay. Is anybody not planning to come to the next meeting? We don't know about Allison because she's not here.
That's
Adam
July,
looks like he's
Say
coming.
we're doing the 5th or?
July 5th.
It's July the 5th.
That's a tough one.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah.
I have family in town then, so I'm gonna say no.
Okay, Mark?
I could make it. I wouldn't be opposed if it was a short meeting.
Okay, so if we have me, Adam, Chris, and Mark, plus or minus Allison, that would do. We could have the meeting on the 5th.
I would say have Joy invite her family to the meeting. I think that would be
There we
fantastic.
go.
That's good.
Very funny. Not happening.
I hear you. Okay.
All right, great. And if anybody has any other thoughts about how we can move things along, that would be good. Just keep that in mind that we want to do that at some point. And unless anyone has anything else, we're ready for Chris.
I would like to move that we adjourn.
Oh, well.
I'm sorry.
Seconded by Mark.
Yeah, actually, I was gonna bring something else up, but this is a good breaking point. We can talk about it in the next meeting. We'll talk about
All
it.
right. Sounds good. Anyone opposed? No one is opposed. So that means we can adjourn. This is a positive vote. Great. Thanks everybody for coming. And we'll see you all on the 5th.
Thanks, guys. Have a good 4th.
Happy 4th.
Yeah, you
folks,
too.
guys.
Yeah. Have a happy.